Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage. Today we're going to finish up with the cam degreeing on the 421 and the 377. Basically, we're going to give it a very scientific, highly technical, close enough. And then we're going to cut the corners off this brand new oil pan so it'll fit in my 56 Chevy 210 Handyman wagon. My final thoughts on degreeing in the camshaft on the 421 small block, this one and the 377, is in both cases I have scat crankshafts. I have comp cams camshafts. In both cases they're different part numbers, but they came from the same place. And I have two similar time and chain setups that both share what appear to be identical lower gears. And on both engines, I'm in the advanced 2 keyway. And on both engines, the cam card says 106 degrees intake centerline. And I have measured both multiple times, and I am at 105. So, I read a few tips online. It said it's possible your cam lobe could be asymmetrical. Try going 20 thousandths to either side of maximum lift on the wheel. And I still came out with 105. So I could bore out the upper gear, put an offset bushing to gain a degree. I could get a different upper gear that's completely adjustable. I think you can get 8 degrees in the upper gear if you buy the adjustable one. Or I can just leave it. In this case, they're both big small blocks. And if advancing the cam, even a degree, gives you more low end, that's a property you look for in a big small block. So I'm going to leave it. If I go direct reading off the wheel, it dwells at maximum lift between 105 and 106. It's 106 right here, and I'm still on 0. So that's why you do 20 or 50 thousandths either side of 0 and then split the difference. But in this case, I'm going to put everything back in the box and call it good. I'm going to try the cam button that I made for the 377 because I have the same timing cover, and there's no reason other than manufacturing tolerances that it wouldn't be the same over here. So I'll just try the button I already cut in the 421, and if it works out, I'll cut another one just like it. Or a different size, however that works out. And then I can put the timing covers on and work on finishing up the oiling system. The heads for the 421, I don't have valves for, so that's going to, when I button up the short block, that'll be parked for a few minutes while I get parts. This one I have the heads complete. They have the correct valve spring in them for this hydraulic roller retrofit cam it has. And we'll cover all that in future episodes. I didn't cover, I promised I would. I call this a universal valve relief because to the eye, they're pretty much identical. So it didn't matter which side they were on. On the 421, one is bigger than the other. So you had to have exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust, exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust. And have the connecting rod be turned the right direction so they face each other correctly on the crankshaft. It will be interesting, to me anyway, when we calculate the compression ratio between the engines. The 377 has a 4.155 bore and a true flat top, but only a 348 stroke. The 421 has a 4.155 bore, so the bores are the same. It has a slight dish in the piston, but it has a 3.85 stroke. So it'll be interesting. The cylinder head, I believe, they're both going to have 64cc combustion chambers, so it'll be interesting to see how close they are, with one of them having a dish piston but more displacement. Each cylinder in the 421 is 5.5 cubic inches larger. Second thrust button, cut to size. It starts about 800 thousandths. Now it's 685. And then I round up the end, kind of like it came out of the package. I just use a file and some sandpaper. I have both buttons and covers installed for the last mock-up. The 421 is going to have the long water pump, and it clears the cover by a mile without any gaskets. But I've learned, because I bought two covers, I have two sets of the extra thick gaskets that come with the Mylodon front cover. So I have a spare set, so I'm going to go ahead and use these. I was able to clearance the cover. See if I can get a little light in there. And it just clears. I'm going to give it a little more when I take it off one more time. No problem on the driver's side. There we go. Won't blind you, but yeah. So I technically have the cover fitting with the short water pump. I'll give it just a little more clearance. Duplicate that one while it's off, just so in the future it could have either pump as well. For a thrust button and camshaft end play, I just go in there with a screwdriver and gently rock the camshaft back and forth. And I want it to just move a little bit. The spec is like 4 to 10 thousandths. But as long as it wiggles a little bit, it's good. Here under the 56 wagon, where I'm still working on final placement of the engine, the mock-up engine and transmission, it's clear I have the wheels cut all the way to the right, well, as far as they'll go, because they hit the corner of this style oil pan. Clearly I need to nip the corner off either side for clearance. I like the gold pan, so I'm not going to cut that one. But I have a black one. It's the same pan. So I'm just going to chop and weld in some pieces. And this pan will go on the 377. And the gold pan will go on the 421, uncut. I stared at it for a few minutes, looking at all the multiple angles and ways I could do this the easiest. And then I stopped thinking about it and just cut straight down through it. Now it's a simple matter of just tracing that shape onto a piece of metal and welded it in on both sides. I had to rethink my angle because I didn't want to hit the pan down here. So that's what the extra marks are about. We have it all TIG welded up. I laugh because the blue notcher over there I used to make the patches. I love that thing. And I cleared it off to use it, and throughout this process I've used all the Milwaukee tools plus the air sander, and I put them all back over there subconsciously like it never happened, because 20 minutes ago I was using the notcher. I TIG welded it with just 035 MIG wire I had laying around because it melts really easy, and it came out okay. It's pretty thin stuff, but on both sides, halfway up the front, I hit something and got the dreaded fizzle where you have impurities bubbling out of the weld, and then you have to grind it down as best you can and try to patch it in. But I think I got it. Most of it came out okay. Now I'm going to flood it with Potts washer solution. Let it sit for a while to make sure it doesn't leak, and then I'll paint her up. Filled it full of Potts solvent up over the welded area. Pan over a pan. Would dry on the passenger side. Wah, wah, wah. But we're dripping over here. I gotta figure out where, but she's dripping. See it? Boom, boom, boom. This is why you test it. Back to the drawing board. Imagine my surprise when I'm moving the pan so I can get a magnet under it, and the leak stops because the fluid went away from this leaking drain plug washer. It was running across underneath the pan to the driver's side corner. So now we're still full of fluid. I'll let it sit right here on the bench. I dried it off underneath. And I'll come back in a while, and I'll either be happy or sad. Well, so far so good. It's still sitting here on the bench.
full of fluid, not leaking. I didn't like the nylon washer they put on the drain plug anyway because it's way too big and it just doesn't fit. And clearly, if you're not careful, it's going to leak. So this was a 8 1/4 deep, 7-quart pan. And I don't think I lost too much fluid capacity. This might be, well, I don't know. Have to measure it, but not much. I mean, it's not even 1/4 of a quart. So we still have nearly 7 quarts. The Melling bolt-on pickup is made for an 8-inch pan. This is advertised as 8 1/4, but I've already measured it, and it gives me about 3/8 of an inch suction clearance on the bottom. So that'll be fine. Next time you see it, it will be all painted and installed on the 377. And I could do the same with the 421, but the oil pan, the gold one, is still in the car and it won't come out. And I still need to straighten the engine out in the 56. I'm going to put it where I want it, straight, and rebuild the mounts that bolt to the engine. I've already drilled the frame and put the frame mounts on, so I don't want to Swiss cheese the frame. But I don't mind making new motor mounts so I can put it exactly where I want. I kind of have both headers fitting, the two that came together in the box. Previous videos, I had one header from one box I bought and another header from another box of headers I bought. And that would have worked, but I really wanted to use the same ones so I don't have 2 odd sets of headers. So kind of doing what I should have done in the first place, just put the engine where I want it and make my own mounts. But I didn't, and now I will. So it's Thursday afternoon, evening almost. Hope you're having a great week. Talk to you in a couple days.